Welcome to Screw the Commute, the entrepreneurial podcast dedicated to getting you out of the car and into the money. With your host, lifelong entrepreneur and multimillionaire, Tom Antion.
Hey everybody, it's Tom here with episode 108 of Screw the Commute podcast. I've got Dov Baron here, and this is a guy, the only guy in my entire life that I have been in a hallway of a hotel with, half naked, trying to protect one of our female friends. So I'll tell you about that later. All right. And hope you didn't miss episode 107, Mark S.A. Smith. Now, this guy found a cool and simple way to brand himself, and he's teaching small business owners like us why we need to act like executives. And it was a really eye-opening interview with lots of tips, especially if you'd like to eventually sell your business. All right, our podcast app is now in the iTunes store. You can go to screwthecommute.com/app, A-P-P, and we got the complete screenshots. And if you don't know how to use apps that well, boy, we show you how to use all the fancy stuff in our Screw the Commute podcast app so that you can take us with you on the road a lot easier. Now, our Roku on-demand TV channel, the public speaking channel, is live. Maybe by the time you listen to this, we'll have a couple other channels going there. You get probably $100,000 worth of public speaking training if you just have a Roku box and watch our channel. It's called the Public Speaking Channel, so check it out on Roku TV. Now, our youth program is in full swing. We're looking for young people. When I say young, that's up to early 20s or so that are doing great entrepreneurial things. And we want to highlight them once a month on our Screw the Commute podcast. So you can have them get in touch with me at orders@antion.com, and we'll show them how to apply. And maybe they can be featured on an episode of Screw the Commute. All right, our sponsor today is the Distance Learning School, the Internet Marketing Training Center of Virginia. Don't even think about retraining yourself or sending your kids to college until you check out our webinar on higher education. I do not want you wasting hundreds of thousands of dollars and putting yourself and your kids under crushing debt. And we'll have a webinar in the show notes at screwthecommute.com, or you can go directly to screwthecommute.com/webinars and either watch the webinar or you can download the MP3 and listen to it. But I got to tell you, you're going to be mad when you hear some of the things these colleges and universities are doing to you and your family. All right, let's get to the main event. Dov Baron, he was twice cited as one of Inc. magazine's top 100 leadership speakers to hire. He's also cited in the Meetings and Event Professionals Guide to the top 100 motivational speakers and named one of the top 30 global leadership gurus. Now, Dov is a man with a finger on the pulse of the evolving world of next-gen leadership. And we really need to pay attention to that as entrepreneurs because some of us old farts are having trouble figuring out these younger people. He's a best-selling author of several books, and his latest book is Fiercely Loyal: How High-Performing Companies Develop and Retain Top Talent. Dov, are you ready to screw the commute?
I am, mate. I am. I'm lubed up.
Oh, man. So how you doing? So last time I saw you, you were half naked in a hallway, I think. Tell them about that story.
Yes, there was you. I was going to say we were in bed. We were in bed. But
yes, across the hall from each other.
And all of a sudden, across the hall from each other, and suddenly there's this scream of a lady, and we, who actually was one of our colleagues, screaming, and I jumped out of bed, as did you. Fortunately, you had more clothes on than I did. I had a T-shirt on that could have been a little longer because it looked like I was smuggling a goat underneath my T-shirt. We ran out in the hallway to look for whoever it was who had made it down the back steps. And unfortunately, we didn't catch him, but I had, in the quick run out of the room, of course, when you run out of a hotel room, what happens?
Lock the door.
Lock behind. So I required Mr. Tom to go back into his room, get me a towel so that I could cover up the shall we say, the marsupials that were brought from Australia with me.
Oh man, but I've always after the fact wished that we'd have seen that guy running down the hall and both of us done like the football clothesline from both sides of the hall and just watch him flip up and down and then call the police.
We'd have got that guy, man. He would have. I mean, aside from taking him to the ground, which would have been pretty easy for either of us to do. I think he might have stopped in his steps to see me. With no
I'd have got him
on.
from behind then. But this is
that might have frightened the poor guy
well,
into giving up a life of crime.
Well, this is a good point, though. The lady, our friend, had just said, "I'm going to run down and get some ice," and her husband was in the room, and all she did was put that little latch to keep the door from closing. And when she came back, a guy was in there going through her stuff, and she screamed bloody murder and scared the heck out of the guy, and he ran down the hall and got away. But you got to really be careful nowadays with security, that's for sure.
Well, you certainly got to pay attention. But, I mean, I think that I think you've got to pay attention and you got to be aware. But at the same time, you can't be living your life.
No, heck no. It's just a balance of paying attention to your surroundings and living your life, looking at the good stuff along with the bad stuff. So tell everybody what you're doing now, and then we'll take you back to a long time ago. Not that long. You're a young man.
Oh, yeah. Let's keep telling them lies. They can't see me.
And we'll see how you came up through the ranks. So what do you do nowadays?
Well, nowadays, my main focus of my business is that I work with high-level individuals who are entrepreneurs, CEOs, often athletes and entertainers, in helping them to find their personal purpose, to go from success to significance and on to creating a legacy. So that's what I do privately, one-on-one. The people I work with are often very successful and are going, I'm not sure that it's going to have any meaning if I get another $1 million or whatever it is. There's something missing. Now, oftentimes there are people who are not at that level, but they are up very often that they're like, what's missing? Those are my private clients. We also work with companies and organizations and their executive teams in helping the company to become purpose-driven. Because what we know now is that this is not a woo-woo thing. What we know is that over 10 years of research shows that stock values in a company that is purpose-driven are 12 times.
What kind of values?
So that means
12 times. Oh, stock values. Okay.
Yeah. So the value of a company will go up by 12 times if it's a purpose-driven organization. And part of the reason for that is because millennials are purpose-driven. They want meaningful work. And so they want to work for a meaningful company, a purpose-driven organization. And that's how they keep them loyal. So that's the work that we do with the companies and the organizations. And of course, I speak on platforms around the world, everywhere from here to Australia to Iran, Europe, all those kinds of places. So that's the main thrust of what it is that I do. Of course, I write books. And as you mentioned, Fiercely Loyal was one of my last bestsellers. But actually, more recently, I have a book called One Red Thread, which is perfect for entrepreneurs to actually help you find your purpose. So you can do that without hiring me. Go get it. The book, it's you can buy it on ebook or paperback on Amazon, and just go through the exercises. But don't just read it. That won't work. You actually have to do the exercises.
Are you still doing your own larger events? Like I spoke at one of your events. I think it was in Vancouver, somewhere.
It was Vancouver. Yeah, we were honored to have you on our platform. We don't do those anymore because I wanted to stay married.
Yeah, I get that idea. It's a lot of work putting on events for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, so we put on a lot of events, as you know. We used to put on about 14 events a year, and it was pretty exhausting. And now we only speak at other people's events, and I don't do that speak to sell thing at all. I'm there to serve, and I love doing that.
Yeah, that's what me too. I just hated the planning stage. I didn't have to worry about staying married, but the planning is just so many details. People don't realize when if an event's going smooth, it's because somebody did a lot of work to make it happen.
Well, it's the same thing as, this is one of the things that I want to actually speak to entrepreneurs about right now. And that is this. I remember when I went and saw this speaker speak in Australia many, many years ago, actually 35 years ago, and thinking, Jesus, this guy's cleaning up. I want to get in on this gig. What a dumbass I was, right? Because there's no consideration of what it took for that guy to put 500 people in that room on that day.
Right.
The amount of work that goes on in the background. So there's two things with entrepreneurship. I would not be anything other than an entrepreneur. So let me just say that to you. I've been an entrepreneur since I was 16 years old. However, let me tell you, it is far more work than you imagine. And if you think that being an entrepreneur is going to give you more freedom, that is true, but that's not short term. For short term, you're probably going to work more hours than you ever did before for less money than you ever did before. But there's a reason behind it, and you need to find that reason, because that's what's going to get you out of bed in the morning when you're just exhausted because you didn't finish work yesterday till 2 a.m. and you have a 6 a.m. meeting. That's what's going to, if you're not driven by something more than money, something more than having no boss, that's not going to be enough. You need to dig deep, because there's a far more to getting to where you want to go to than you could possibly imagine. Because most of it is glorified, particularly in the days of, where you have Gary Vaynerchuk, who actually is good at telling people you have to hustle. But in the days of Ty Lopez showing his Lamborghinis and all the rest of that nonsense, that's just because it just doesn't work like that. It's very nice, and I'm happy for the guy that has got that, but you will have to work your ass off for minimum wage and less just to get over that hump.
Yeah.
And if you've got something driving you more than the money, it'll be worth it.
Yeah, and when you see those stack of bills and then no orders coming in or no sales or no prospects, it's daunting. I mean, it's we've all been there at various times, and even when you're on top, like when I had the nightclub, and then I was put out of business because the legislature changed the drinking age, and I'd worked 7 days a week for 6 years, and so so you got to have that something drive inside you that I'm gonna scratch and crawl out of that hole and make it, and then when you do that enough, then you can breathe a little bit, but I don't know. Some of us just keep scratching and crawling because we like it.
Well, I mean, I think that there's a certain it's, let's face it, right? Entrepreneur is the new rock star, right? The cool guys to be. But when you look at that, because you talked about being in clubs, I have been around clubs and was a doorman, and we talked about that years ago. And I was part of that world too, and I knew lots and lots of musicians. And I live in Vancouver, which is Hollywood North, and I know lots and lots of actors, and most of them are waiters. And this is the thing that people don't realize, that there's very few actors, there's very few musicians, and there's very few entrepreneurs who actually put their nose to the grindstone for 10 years in order to break through. Every overnight success has 10 years behind it. People looked at Justin Bieber and said, this kid's 15 years old and he's got the biggest hit, when he broke out from Canada. Hello, Justin Bieber started playing drums at 5 years old. He's a very accomplished musician. Whether he's a dick or not is not really what we're talking about. What we're talking about is he put the hours in, he put the dedication in, he put the commitment in to honing his craft. Whether you like him or not is not relevant. Well, you have to look at each of those people. When you look at Tom Antion, you might go, oh, here's a guy who's really made it. But have you any idea of the backstory? I know the backstory of Tom. And the backstory is work upon work upon work upon people stealing shit from him, people, that rubbing him up the wrong way, doing things bad, and him committing to getting out of that hole and going through and doing what it takes. And this is the thing I want to drive home to every entrepreneur. You got to drop the idea of the glamour. If you can get rid of the idea of the glamour, then you can actually reach the glamour. But you will not get it if you're pursuing the glamour. You have to be pursuing your own purpose, something deeper that drives you.
Yeah, and this is something that's frustrating me lately. I made maybe dumb decision. I thought, I'm going to hold some meetups at my school and an entrepreneurial, and they have access to me to come and I do some high-level trainings. Sometimes I get 1 or 2 people showing up. And all these, I got 160 people in the first couple of weeks joined the group. Nobody shows up. everybody wants to be an entrepreneur, but they won't get off their butts and do what it takes. I mean, having like I say, you could stuff a gold bullion down their throat and they wouldn't take a bite. So it's a special person that actually breaks through and makes it. Now, we had a lady on a couple episodes ago, and she's an expert in Gen Z. Z is in Z. Mm-hmm. And yeah. I said, well, that must be the end of the world, because where do you go after Z? And she was telling me stuff that I'm like, I'm going to be 64 this July. And she's telling me stuff, well, this generation, they're kind of flexible with time, and, you got to go along. I'm thinking, all right, so I should put a sign up on my door of my store that says, well, we might open at 9, we might open at 10. It depends. How do you deal with these generation people, Dov?
Well, it's a great question, and I think that I actually love millennials. I wrote a lot about them in Fiercely Loyal, and I'm actually investigating a lot and doing a lot of research around Gen Z, Gen Z mm-hmm. as well. So one of the things we need to learn is that this is the first time we know in history where we've had 5 working generations, which is pretty cool. Mm-hmm. It's pretty amazing. So Gen Z are 18 years old at the oldest. Okay, so that's the oldest ones of them. Millennials, we think of those as kids, but actually millennials are already 19 to 39 years old. So they're already in leadership positions. Mm-hmm. They are the screen generation, but the Gen Z are the extreme screen generation. Right. So they're operating multiple screens at any single time. And so what you have to understand is that the idea, every human being has natural inbuilt bias. We all have a bias on that. We think this is the way it is, but that's because that's the way it's been for us. So we call millennials entitled, but they're not entitled. They understand and learn differently than we do. And if we have to put that to the side. So for instance, when I'll go in and I'm standing there with 10 or 15 CEOs and I'm saying, okay, tell me something about millennials. And they're entitled always comes up. And I go, okay, so how would you define entitled? And they start to explain it. And then I'll say, let me ask you a question. If I take a group of people and they voluntarily donate a chunk of their time, and I'm talking about a large chunk of their time, every single week, every single year, consistently, without any pay, they just want to donate it because there's a cause they believe in, would you say that person is entitled? They'd say, oh, no, of course not. And I go, those are millennials. They donate more of their time than anybody else. They're more collaborative than any other generation. They want to be part of things, and they don't actually mind if their name is not included. What they mind is that they're building something bigger. This is what we've got to learn from these people. They are actually more collaborative. They are more global in their thinking. They do not, if you look at what's going on in the rise of right-wing politics across the world, not just in America, but across the world, what you'll see is actually that's not the young people. What that is an older generation who are becoming more tribal, whereas the Gen Z and millennials are more expansive. They want to connect with people around the world. Our job with them is to get them to do eyeball to eyeball and actually get them to physically, press flesh, as we used to call it, which is, shake hands and hug each other. So that's the distinction. But we've got a lot to learn from these next generations. And I think they're amazing, and I think we can learn a lot from them. But we've got to get off our perches and think that we're the only ones who can mentor them.
All right, but can't we have some basics, Dov? I mean, can't we say, okay, our meeting is at 9 o'clock, not 9:30, not 9:40, 9 o'clock. Do they have no concept of what a clock is and time? I mean, this drives me crazy. Yeah. Oh, yeah. We have no concept of time. Well, guess what? I do, and the customer does. The people paying the bills do. Maybe you have to dummy up a little bit and come up with some just basics. What about politeness? What about shaking hands? What about respect for others? How about some basics? Can we have that, or do we just have to put up with whatever they come up with?
No. So I think that we're in this gross generalization now, and that's always a problem.
Oh, I'm happy to stereotype.
Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you for the clarity on that. So the fact of the matter is that I know many millennials who are on time. I know many who are very courteous and very professional and all the rest of it. But let's just first let's break this apart a little bit. So the first part of it is this: is millennials are this is one of the things I love about millennials. They're all way more entrepreneurial. Now, some of that is conceptual and some of that is reality, as we talked about at the beginning. But they think entrepreneurially because they don't trust big business, because they watch their parents bite the biscuit in 2008, 2009, 2010, after their parents had put 10, 15, 20 years into a company and just get turfed out. So they inherently don't trust business, and they're always looking for what the next escape route, what's better for me, how can I climb. So that's what we need to know. They have a good reason not to trust, and I'm okay with that. That's fine. Now, on top of that, what we need to understand is that there are certain things, as you said, Tom, and quite rightly, that need to be on time. But what we as our generation need to learn is, where doesn't time matter? So what I mean by that is, if I give Charlie, let's say Charlie's my virtual millennial, a project to do, I don't care if Charlie does that at 2 o'clock in the morning or at 5 o'clock in the morning or at midnight. I don't care. What I care is that it's done by my deadline. So what we have to do is get away from time and go to results. And so when we go to results, then we have to create accountability systems with millennials. And by the way, much to most people's surprise, millennials love clarity of accountability. So if I say I need this by then, and they can touch base and get back to me and make sure that they understand things properly, they actually love that. So I say, I don't care if you're on the golf course, I don't care if you're in the movies, I just need to know that you're going to get this to me by then. Now, here's the interesting thing. For you and I know this because both of us have this thing, and that's why I was apologetic, because I was at 9 o'clock and instead of 1 minute to 9, because I like to be 5 minutes early for everything. That's our generation. If you're on time, you're late.
Yeah.
However, for millennials, what you have to understand for them is they're still working out of a college mentality. And that is, I have till midnight to get it in. So 11:59 is on time. So if it has to be in on Tuesday, that means Tuesday at midnight. So that's 11:59 is on time. That's how they think. So we have to make sure that we understand that. So if you say, I need it by Monday, you actually need it by Sunday at midnight, if you need it Monday morning to work with. So this is just understanding how they think.
Well, I'm just thinking though that they are going to get a rude awakening if they are entrepreneurial, and a guy like me is going to give them a big contract, and I'm showing up at a meeting to give them this big contract, and they're all late and fooling around and doing nothing, and I say, you know what? I don't deal like this. Goodbye, because the people that have a lot of money are older, and so I think they're going to get a rude awakening if they don't find that balance between, okay, you get the job done, but hey, if we really want to be successful, we have to do some of the old school methods. I don't see how they can get away with that.
I can see totally how they get away with it. It's called death. We are dying, right? Their generation is 39 years old and younger, and we are in our 60s and 70s and 80s.
But we're living longer.
That is true. But they are also starting to make the money. They're starting to do business with themselves. It's fascinating to me. On my show, I had I'm trying to remember his name now. He started a company called Rich 20 Something. Hugely successful entrepreneur guy, brilliant guy, and I think he was 28 when I interviewed him. He's now 30 or something. Super bright, deep, understanding, philosophical, very entrepreneurial, and he talks about the same things. He talks about other millennials, and he says, we have to understand that when we're dealing with another older generation, they do care about time. So there are people who really get it, but millennials are going to be dealing with those guys. So yes, when they deal with us, we then again, this is us setting boundaries and accountability. So so I'm saying to a millennial when I work with them, so if I need this by Monday, what's on time for you? I actually ask that question, and then they'll tell me, and I'll say, here's what it is for me, and this is what we need to agree to. And they go, okay.
Well, I mean,
So it's our clarity.
I hope it works for him because I just have, I mean, and I'm reflecting a lot of people in my age group that are just having trouble going along with this stuff, and the whole thing with giving trophies out for showing up and picking your nose and all that stuff.
Oh, listen, mate, you and I are on the same page with that stuff. You and I are also in the same age bracket, so it's not that. I'm certainly not giving people rounds of applause for actually showing up. But I'm very much inclined to give people rounds of applause for things that they did well and recognition. But let me just give everybody some insight around this. If you are working with millennials, here's what you need to do to keep them loyal. You need to be purpose driven. You need to know what your purpose is because it's high. It's one of the highest things on the top 5 of what makes them work for a place is that it's meaningful work.
Right.
Meaningful work means you have a purpose driven organization. Okay. Purpose driven leaders. So not only do I believe in the company, I believe in the leader. When they have those two things, they will do more for you than they will do for anything else. On top of that, you have to build accountability systems for them. They like accountability systems. On top of that, you must be willing to ask. And our generation are terrible at asking. What we do is we tell.
Right. Yeah.
Stop telling and start asking. So, Bob, I need this done by Tuesday. Get it done. Doesn't work. Bob, I need this done by Tuesday. How do you think is the best way for us to get it done? Now, you don't have to agree with Bob's answer, but you have to give Bob a voice. And you have to not get all over that voice. You have to say, or should that voice to death, you have to say, okay, that's a good idea. And what about this? Oh, okay. Bob will then go away and do it. You have to be inclusive. And one of the problems with our generation is we're not inclusive with them. We want to bark orders because we're the boss, because we pay the bill. So what? Here's the deal. You may write the check, but there's nobody to write the check for if they walk out and go to your competitor. And they will. So understand that these are your collaborated people. They're not your slave or indentured individuals. These are your collaborators. Treat them like that. Listen to them. Ask instead of telling. You can still give your input. You can still give the guidance. And you can still create, okay, this is an emergency, so we need a deadline on this and have your accountability. Honestly, you will be surprised at how amazing they are. I love working with millennials because I know I'll get stuff done. But I know I'm the one who has to be very clear about this is my boundary.
Yeah, and I must be doing something right because I've had people here 12 years, some of them, so but it's still inside of me. It's like I'm fighting with every day. I can't believe because it's just like you said, if you're not early, you're late in my book. So let's take you back to you said you've been entrepreneurial since 16. Did you ever have any jobs?
Well, I did. I actually had a job when I was 14. I lied about my age and got a job. And because I had facial hair at 14, so I could get away with it. And so I did an apprenticeship. I did a 4-year apprenticeship in 10 months.
Wow.
Then taught in an academy for that particular industry. And within a few months left and started my first business. So that was my job. I did have another job, I think. I had another job briefly in Australia before I left, working up north on the gas line. Went up there as what's the term? Laborer, as an unskilled laborer, because it was up north and it was very, very, very good pay. And I went up there for a few months to work up to make some money because I was moving to Canada, and I just wanted to put some money in the account. And I went up there, and within 2 days I was promoted, and within a week I was promoted again, and by the end of the month I was promoted again. So I was making $27 an hour.
Wow.
On a job that I was only doing just purely to make some cash, and then I left to get on my plane and come to Canada. So that was the end of the job thing. It never really works out well for me because I'm very millennial. I don't like being told what to do. Like we might bitch and moan about millennials, but every entrepreneur is a millennial. Millennial's not just an age group, it's a mentality. And it's basically, I don't like following other people's rules. Now, my rule, like yours, Tom, is I want to be early. I don't want to be on time. But at the same time, that's my platform. That's how I want to work. So it's very entrepreneurial. And that's, for me, I didn't like following other people's rules. I didn't like wearing their uniform. I didn't want to follow all that stuff. I knew that I had creativity and I wanted to experience that in the world. So the job didn't last very well for me.
Well, so what did you start as your first business?
My very first business I was a mobile hairstylist.
You're kidding me. No kidding.
I am not kidding you. Absolutely.
Well, did you go to hairstyling school? Because it's pretty strict rules. Okay.
Yeah, that's why I did my apprenticeship.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Apprenticeship. Back in those days, it was a 4-year apprenticeship. I did a 4-year apprenticeship in 10 months. I was teaching in the academy by the time I was 15 years old. How it happened was when I went to school at 14, we had a career counselor who came to the class and he asked everybody, what do you want to do? And I said, I wanted to be an artist. My art was in galleries by the time I was 10 or 11 years old. And so I said, I want to be an artist. And he just looks at me, being the dick that he was, said, only 1 in 100 make it, and only a 1 in 100 of those make any money at it. Find someone else. Thank you for the encouragement, you fabulous guy. So I went home and had a good old cry and told my mom what he had said. And my mom said, well, there's other ways to be an artist. And I said, what do you mean? She goes, well, do you have to just do art on a canvas? And I said, no. She says, well, what about doing it with hair? And I'm like, so, okay. So she said, I know a guy. And she actually knew personally a guy who had grown up in close to where I had grown up in the ghetto. But he had become a very famous hairstylist in the city. And she called him and asked him if he would give her son a Saturday job, which is just going in on Saturdays for a few quid. And I went in to do that. And I loved it. I became obsessed. And that's why I got my apprenticeship and did 4 years in 10 months. But it was also a wonderful freedom for me because I realized I could do that anywhere in the world. So that's how I got to travel and study and open businesses and study with different teachers from around the world. Not hairstyling, but studying psychology, quantum physics, metaphysics, mysticism, mythology. I got to study all those different things because I always had this skill set that gave me such amazing flexibility.
All right. So how did you transition into what you're doing now?
While I was doing all that, like I said, I was traveling and studying. I traveled the world to study with these great teachers in religious philosophy, Buddhism, the Tao, Vedanta, Hindu philosophy, Gnostic Christianity. Started studying psychology while I was doing that. Studied to be a counselor, became a counselor, became a family therapist, learned family dynamics and quantum physics. And then I had these clients who would come in, and was one particular client, Steve, who owned a national menswear company. So he owned this company, and he was one of my clients. So he would come in, and we would just have these phenomenal conversations. And one day he said to me, he said, I'd like you to come speak to my national managers. And I'm like, about what? And he goes, anything you want. So this is 1984. Right. And I said, what do you mean, anything I want? He goes, you can talk about anything you want. We have these great conversations. I want you to come talk to my managers. I'm like, Steve, I don't know these people. I'm not a speaker. And he goes, it's fine. Come on in. And I said, how long for? 10 minutes? And he goes, oh, no, an hour. And I'm like, oh, my God, no. You know now, Tommy.
I know. You got to shut you up after an hour and a half or 3 hours.
Exactly. Right? Exactly. The hook around the neck. But then it was like terrifying. So I agreed to half an hour. And he said, but I have one condition. So again, 1984. And for those of you who are not old enough to remember 1984, my hair was chest length. It looked like the Louis XIII hairstyle, which was Howard, what's his name? Howard, the DJ, Howard Stern's
Howard Stern, yeah.
Long ringlet curls down to my chest. I wore earrings that were big enough to hang parrots off. I'd been a bodybuilder since I was 19, so I was 24. So I was, so when you're young and a bodybuilder, it's important that everybody knows.
Yeah, right.
So I wore clothes that were way too tight. So I'm in this tight T-shirt, ripped jeans, long hair, earrings, and I've got designer stubble. And he said, yeah, I have one condition. I go, here we go. I probably got to wear a suit or something. And he said, no, I want you to dress exactly like that. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, I want you to wear exactly what you're wearing. And I said, well, can I put my hair in a ponytail? And he goes, nope, I want you to look exactly like this. I said, really? Now, you should know that Steve owned a national menswear company, and how I had met him was he made my suits. So when I wasn't dressed the way I've just described, I wore beautiful tailored suits that he made for me. So, because you know I like nice clothes,
absolutely.
Tom. You know, because I don't buy them from eBay.
I know.
Like some people I know.
Hey, folks, his shoes are worth more than my wardrobe in the last 12 years. What he's wearing right now at home, probably his slippers are probably worth more.
So I said, okay, fine. So I show up at it's this long boardroom, and I put my head in the door, and I see these guys down this long board table, 1980s. They all look like Gordon Gekko. They're buttoned up tight in their suits and ties, right? And they look at me as I put my head in with this crazy hair. They look at me and they give me what we used to call in England the bugger off nod, which is the head to the side. Just bugger off, you're in the wrong room. Right? But I just smiled and stayed there and waited. And then Steve said, let's welcome our speaker. And he welcomed me and, you know, clunk, jaws hit the desk. So this wild man, you know, with all muscles, tight T-shirt, ripped jeans, crazy hair, big earrings. I stand in front of him, and this is the early 80s when racism was a big issue in Australia with the Aboriginal First Nations people. And I said, put your hand up if you're a racist. Now, I don't remember what I spoke about. I only remember what I opened with. And I said, put your hand up if you're a racist. And of course, you can imagine, nobody put their hand up. Right? And I said, okay, put your hand up if you would judge somebody by the color of their skin or by anything that is visual, like the color of their skin, whether they look poor or rich or, you know, whatever it might be. Put your hand up if you would judge them by that. Nobody puts their hand up. And I said, you're a bunch of freaking liars. Every single one of you judged me by the way that I look. You decided how much money I had, how intelligent I was, and whether I was a customer by the way that I look today. But what you need to know is I am your customer. That's how I know Steve. You make my suits. And if I'd have walked in and any of you clowns that have been there, you would have lost business. And I think, you know, and you know, I think at that point of shit, the bed is all over. I look over at Steve, and he's a smart guy. He's way smarter than me. He's grinning from ear to ear because he knew what he was doing. Right? And that was my introduction to speaking to companies and organizations. Now, here's the sidebar of that. If the story ended there, that would make me a speaking hero because I was completely and totally authentic. And Steve understood that, and that was my strength. But I went away, and I saw Steve the week after, and he was like, yeah, that was fantastic. It really got us off to a great start. It made us open up. It was fantastic. Thank you. He comes back a few weeks later. He goes, Alistair wants you to speak for his company. Alistair was another guy we knew who also owned a national menswear company. That's not menswear, but fashion, not menswear, ladies and yes. He goes, he wants you to speak. I'm like, oh, wow, great. I had a good time. I enjoyed it. He goes, great. So what did I do? I went away and did my research because I'm not a speaker. I want to know what speakers do and what speakers look like. And that's exactly what I did. So I noticed that speakers in the early 1980s had a uniform, blue suit, white shirt, red tie, patent leather shoes, certainly not long hair, and certainly not designer stubble. They either were clean shaven or they had some nasty ass mustache. So what did I do? I cut off my hair, bought a blue suit, white shirt, red tie. Oh my God. Cut my hair off and had this dead caterpillar on my lip and died a death from the next gig and didn't work it out for about 4 years. Couldn't work out what the hell happened.
Wow.
Why was I so good on the first one and not the rest? Because I gave away my authenticity. Right. That's why. And I was too dumb to recognize what it was. So it's a hero story until you realize, yeah, I'm a hero by accident. And then I'm a complete idiot on purpose because I actually let my head get in the way and went, oh, okay, what is it? And it was only when I came back to being truly authentic that I became a good speaker again because, you know, I haven't worn a tie on stage for years and years and years. Don't wear suits. You know that, Tom. I dress my style, my way, and I speak my way, as do you, Tom. And that's what makes us endearing. That's what makes people connect. So that was my introduction to the speaking world.
Yeah, and I had a lady one time, was a student of mine. She was an image consultant, and she said, oh, Tom, you gotta you got to wear a double-breasted suit and look like old money and do this and that. And I said, I'm already making $150,000 a month. It's 10 years ago, and she's trying to tell me that, oh yeah, I got to change my image because it's not going well. So, no, I say from stage, if it wasn't for George Foreman and his stretch waistbands off of eBay, I couldn't even get dressed in the morning. So, but that's me.
Hence we are talking about those pants from eBay that I roasted you for on stage, and you roasted me for my $700 pants.
But it works for both of us. That's the whole point. That's the
point, isn't it? It's the authenticity.
Yeah, I mean, I came from blue collar, nothing. I mean, we lived out in the sticks, and my hometown to this day is only 500 people, and we lived in the suburbs. Right? So it's total sticks, and that's what I come from, and that's what you can be successful from any kind of background, but you're better off being you. So, did you ever get screwed over in business? I know that's a funny question. What did you do about it? That's the real question.
Well, I got screwed over by the same person you did.
Yeah.
I confronted that individual to no avail whatsoever. Right. What did I do about it? Same as I always do. You're dead to me.
Exactly.
Done.
Yeah.
You're done, and I will never badmouth anybody unless I'm asked directly about that person. And when I'm asked directly about that person, I say, you probably don't want my opinion. And they say, why? I say, do you like the person? They say, yes. And I say, you don't want my opinion. And that's enough to be said. And sometimes people will push back and say, no, I really want to know. And I say, are you sure? Because you probably won't like my input. And they say, no, I really want to know because I'm about to do business with this person. And I say, well, here was my experience. And I know it's not just mine. I know other people, and I will actually say I know one person in particular, meaning Tom, that has done business with this person. So for me, it's you're dead to me, and I don't want anything to do with you. And it's fascinating to me because I've had this experience where people will come up to me and say, not just about him, but about another person I can think of, say, oh, he's such a wonderful person. I'm glad. And my response is very simple. I'm glad that that's your experience of him. And they go, what do you mean? You have another experience? And I go, yes. And they go, oh, what was it? And I said, it doesn't matter. I'm not here to change your experience. If your experience was good, then my experience may have been an anomaly, and maybe you have the real experience.
Well, I never thought I'd say that you're much more diplomatic than, but I tell them, oh, that's because you're in the web of a serious professional level con person can be, and as a chameleon, be anything they need to be to rob you. So that's what I tell them.
Yeah, but I'm just one of the things I learned. I'll give you an example. Many years ago, back in 1992, I was walking down the street with my mate Mike, my very good friend Mike. We are both bodybuilders. Mike is same height as me, 5'8", and 240 of muscle, so a big guy. We're walking down the street, and all of a sudden I notice this guy who I recognize. Who crosses the street to our side, and as we're walking down the street, I go, hey, and he goes, oh, hey, Dov, and he waves to me, but he doesn't stop, but he keeps walking in. I'm like, that was kind of weird. And so that's fine. And then about 3 or 4 days later, I see this same guy in the gym, and I'm there not with Mike, but I'm on my own. Mike was my best friend and my training partner. And this guy, I said, hey, you were a bit weird when you passed me on Granville the other day. And he's like, how could you hang out with Richards? And I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, with Mike Richards, how could you be with him? And I said, what do you mean? How could I be with him? I was walking with him. He goes, yeah, but, how could you do that? I said, I don't understand what you're talking about. He goes, he is such an asshole. And, and he goes off about him and says all these horrible things. And I said, I don't know who you're talking about. And he goes, yes, you do. Mike Richards, I was with you. I saw you with him. I said, I don't know who you're talking about. And he says, you're telling me that you don't know Mike Richards? I said, no. I'm telling you, I don't know the same Mike Richards you do. My experience of him is not that. My experience of him is he's kind, he's generous, he's spiritual, and he's very funny. And he's like, that? And I'm like, yes, that's your experience. And I will not judge people by somebody else's experience. Therefore, I cannot judge somebody and interfere with their experience. But if they ask me for my opinion specifically, I will give it, but it has to be specific.
Yeah, see, I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to do what you won't do. Because it's just difference in opinion. But I mean, I'm the one that goes out on the limb and creates a TV show. It's in development in Hollywood to get to go against these people because I'm always for the underdog, and I just can't stand when people take advantage of others. And I don't care if somebody charges $1 million a minute, as long as they do what they promise and they don't do it under false pretenses. So I'm kind of what they call us sheepdogs, people that, will stick up for the sheep. So how can people deal with you? Like, you got private training, you got courses. What do you got for the listeners that say, hey, this guy really got his act together? What can they buy from you?
Let's not push it, Tom. Okay. This guy's got his act together. Let's not get in over our heads here. So obviously, as I said, there are lots of books. You can find me on Amazon for all that. My main website is fullmontyleadership.com. You can track me out there.
We'll have all this in the show notes so people can just click on it.
But you can get my books. I also have my own Roku channel. You can find Dov Baron Full Monty Leadership on Roku as well, so that's there. And I'm actually featured on a couple of other Roku channels and also on Binge TV. My own TV series called Pursuing Deep Greatness is on there. My podcast you can also listen to that. All that stuff is available through my website if you want to find it. But if you want to work with me, listen, here's the simplicity of it. And I want to say this to you right now. I don't know if you're a regular listener to this show, but remember I talked about the glamour and the ideas around entrepreneurship. You probably don't know what goes into making stuff happen. So Tom does these shows for you. What was it, 103 so far?
I think
or something?
This is 108, yeah.
108, right. So you have no idea what it takes to put the show together. There's so much work that goes on in the back end. And Tom needs to know that you are listening to this and it's having impact. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to go to iTunes. I want you to rate, review, and subscribe to the show. And I want you to share the show with other people you know who will find value in it. Because part of how Tom knows that this is having impact is you letting him know by rating, reviewing, and subscribing to the show and sharing it with others. And write to him. Let him know what you got out of this. In fact, write to me, DovBaron.com. Dov@dovbaron.com. Write to me, CC Tom. Tell us what you got out of the show. This particular episode, tell us what you got out of it. Tell me how I can help you. How can I serve you? What can I do for you? And do not be surprised if I can help you because, like Tom, I will respond to you. I actually do respond. Yeah, I know you might find that unbelievable. People think I'm mad for giving out my email address, but you can write to me. I will respond to you. If there's a way I can help you, I will. That's why I'm on the planet. But it's important that you value that Tom has put the time, energy, and effort in for you to have what he brings you in this show. So let him know. So write to us both. Tell us what you got out of the show. And if I can help you and you need help from me in some way, reach out to me and we'll see what we can do and find out how I can serve you.
Yeah, and that's why I like Dov. And I mean, and he's a unique individual that he's spending his time promoting me. And a lot of guests are totally the other way around, just doing it for themselves. And so really appreciate this guy and love him to death. So,
well, thank you, Tom. And can I say something here because I think it's important. So, listen, you just heard that banter going backwards and forwards between Tom and I about people in the industry that we're in who have ripped people off. So, the truth of the matter is, you, the listener, you have to decide if you have integrity because nobody can give it to you. And because integrity will always be harder than being unintegral. It will require you to swallow your pride. It will require you to say, I'm sorry. It will require you to send a check to somebody when you don't really have the money. And you have to decide to do that. And it's interesting because there are so many people who are out to get their own, and God bless them for that. But you know what? At the cost of others, no. And one of the things I will tell you about, if you're going to do business with Tom Antion, he is the most integral entrepreneur I know. I had a conversation last week with somebody else in my industry, Ken Keys, and Ken and I were talking. And he says, "Oh, do you know Tom?" I said, "Yes, I know Tom well." He goes, "What a great guy." We talked about Tom because here's the thing: Tom spoke on my stage, and when you speak on somebody else's stage, there's something called a revenue share. Tom was sending me checks 2 years later for like $20. Would I have missed the $20? No. Would I have even known that I was due the $20? No. But Tom is that kind of integral. This is an integral entrepreneur. And those, my friend, are rare. And if you decide to be an entrepreneur and you decide to be one of them, you will be in the upper echelon of entrepreneurs. And that's what it takes. You have to have purpose, and you have to have integrity, and you have to have values, and you have to freaking stick to them, even when it's difficult, because that's what Tom has always done. That's why Tom is loved in the industry, because anybody who does business with Tom knows that he will hold himself completely accountable and absolutely integral. So if you're going to spend money with Tom, you're going to invest in one of his products or his trainings, that is what you will be dealing with. And I operate by exactly the same thing in mind. If you're not going to do that, do us both a favor. Get a job. Don't be an entrepreneur.
Yeah. Boy, very, very great words there from a guy that does the same exact thing, and I could say the same things about him. It just amazes me that people want to, some of these scammers are brilliant, but they channel it into bad stuff, and they could be just as rich and be able to sleep at night if they would channel it into good stuff. But just like Dov said, if you adhere to the high integrity, people will notice, and you'll get plenty of business and be revered, and you won't be worrying about the next person that's going to try to get you for screwing them over. So beautiful, beautiful words. Now, we got to take a break for our sponsor, and when we come back, we're going to ask Dov what's a typical day look like for him and how he stays motivated. So, folks, did you ever wonder how tens of thousands of people like me sit home, earn legitimate money, and don't have to listen to a boss or get up and fight traffic every day? Well, it's because we have online businesses. And you'll learn how to have an online business or get a high-paying job at the only licensed dedicated distance learning school in the country, probably the world, the Internet Marketing Training Center of Virginia. And you check it out at imtcva.org. Of course, we'll have that in the show notes. And remember to watch the higher education webinar at screwthecommute.com. And like I said, be prepared to be mad when you watch, because some of the things the universities and colleges are doing, in my not so humble opinion, are downright fraudulent. And I don't want you to get caught up in that. And one of the reasons, talking about integrity, the reason I started the school was because my industry is unregulated. People say and do anything just to get your money. And I wanted to set myself apart. It took 3 years to get the license for the school, background checks, financial checks, very strict, they do spot checks on making sure you're not ripping students off and your curriculum's good and everything. So it's really something that can get you an in-demand skill in a very short period of time compared to going to some of these longer things and paying outrageous fees for professors that have tenure and could care less if you get an education. So check it out at imtcva.org, and also check out that higher education webinar. All right, let's get back to the main event. We got Super Dov Baron out of Vancouver, Canada. Known this guy for a long time. Dov, what's a typical day look like for you? Maybe one when you're on the road and one when you're in the office. What kind of things do you do every day as part of your business?
So not on the road. My day starts usually around 6. Then I will get up. I will have wash my face and get ready, and then I will have my fat coffee, and then I will go to the gym, work out, come back from that workout, having drank about 2 liters of water as quickly as I possibly can in those first few hours, shower, and come straight into the office that I have in my home, and usually start with not answering emails, not doing any of that, but I will try and actually write for about an hour every day, and then I will start with my meetings. Then twice a week I go through my emails, I don't do that on my own. My assistant goes through them and just sort out what I need to go through. Then I go through most of my day is then spent in meetings, whether that's with my own clients who I work with. A lot of my clients are international, so I'll work with them internationally over Zoom, or in my city office, where I'll meet my eyeball to eyeball, meet my clients, and read for at least an hour a day, meditate.
What kind of things do you read?
And I read a lot of leadership, a lot of psychology. I read a lot of quantum physics. I read a lot of people who don't think the way other people think. I'm fascinated by people who think in a different way. That's I'm like, I want to read people that I don't agree with, because I think that's how I learn. So part of that is that I will watch about somewhere about 20 minutes of Fox TV, about 20 minutes of MSNBC, about 10 minutes of CNN, and about the same of RT and Al Jazeera. So about an hour a day of news that comes from a very broad spectrum of news. So I'm always looking to have insights from a very rounded position. I don't like getting at one of the problems we have is, I'll give you an example. One of the things we talk about is we're always saying, surround yourself with like-minded people. I did a video about this. That's the worst advice you can possibly get. Social media is like-minded people, because actually Facebook guarantees that they'll only feed you stuff you look at. So make sure you click on shit you don't agree with and don't believe in, because then Facebook will start feeding you that too. So my Facebook feed is very different than other people's, because I want to learn from people I don't agree with. I don't have to agree with you. I want to learn from you. What is it that I'm not seeing that you see? Even if it's crazy, I want to see that. I want to understand it. So learning has always been an inherent part of my day, and will continue to do that. And of course, then, I spend some very high quality time with my bride at the end of the day. And I start every day and I finish every day with my gratitudes, with my journaling, with my what I call my greeting. So it's a greeting to the world. It's a greeting to who I am. It's an alignment with my purpose.
I hope if you get a chance, we had an episode, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago from a guy named Rick Raditz. He's made many millions of dollars online, but he's doing his passion, and he's a political philosopher. And oh my God, was he coming up with some stuff? I think you would love it.
I interviewed Rick probably 8 years ago.
Oh, well, I bet you it's totally different now, because he is really into this, and I couldn't hardly keep up with him the way he was.
He was just entering into the political arena in those days, because Rick was very big in the internet marketing before that, as you probably know.
Yeah, still is.
And that's when I had originally met him through John Childers. That's how I'd originally met him many, many years ago. And then I met him at Seng, and then we started talking about politics, because I'm such a politic head, and I ended up having him on the show because of that.
Yeah, well, boy, it's evolved. Let me tell you that, because I just talked to him a couple of weeks ago. So, so what about when you're on the road?
When I'm on the road, I invariably, I just wake up early. That's what I do. I wake up early. I'll work out. If I can't work out, then I just go for a very long walk. I love walking, so I'll go for a long walk. Again, fat coffee to start the day. Again, my greeting to the world, what I call my greeting, which is a whole process that takes about 10, 15 minutes. And part of that is gratitude and recognition and validation of myself, of the world, and alignment with my purpose. I will, if I'm speaking, I will prep for the day. I'll prep for my speaking event. I will do at least one run through of what it is that I'm planning to do. Then I will go.
You do it out loud?
Absolutely.
Me too.
Absolutely. Out loud and with passion. Right. So I don't do it quietly in my head. It's, I am speaking full as if I'm on a platform and I have no microphone and I have 100 people that I've got to reach the back of the
Right.
room. So, yeah, it's full force. I mean, people have actually knocked on my door. Are you okay?
I know.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. And then I go out and I'm very, as you know, I'm very relational. I love meeting people and I go out and meet people. And when I'm at an event, I do my very best to be there for the entire event.
Yep. Same with me.
And I do that on purpose because I'm there to meet people. I'm not just there to present. I'm there to serve. So I want to meet people. I want to find out how I can help them. My goal in every event is to serve a minimum of 5 people with depth, who not from the stage, meaning people I actually interacted with. So I want to make sure I do that. So I commit to serving them. And so very often I'll give thousands of dollars worth of value away to somebody just by giving them a consult and just sitting with them and saying, okay, well, how can I help you? What's going on? What are you struggling with? And see if I can help you. If I can't, then I'll tell them that. And I'll actually say, you know what? You need to speak to Tom Antione. You need to speak to whoever it is because he really knows this world better than me. And that's where you need to go. So I'm always about that. Every morning I start my day when I'm traveling by connecting with my wife and wishing her good morning, or maybe a time difference. And every night I finish my day while I'm away by doing exactly the same, by saying goodnight to her and thanking her for being in my life.
So she doesn't travel with you much?
She does, but not always. Mm-hmm. So when she can't, when she's working on stuff here, because she's my business partner, as you know. So she, we always say good morning. We always say good night. And as I said, I spend at least an hour a day reading and meditate every single day. So that's kind of my day. It has certain structure to it and a lot of floaty stuff to it. None of it, but no executive time.
Yeah. So I guess a lot of that.
I'm not going to Mar-a-Lago.
So I guess a lot of that stuff is actually the next question is how you stay motivated. It seems like it's inherent in your daily life.
It is. People have asked me about that many times. How do you stay motivated? And the answer is simply that I am committed to serve in alignment with my purpose. So how I stay motivated is when I get knocked down, and you will if you're an entrepreneur, that's just par for the course. When I get knocked down, what I will always ask is, why am I here? Before I go on stage, if my wife is there with me, she'll say, who are you? What are you here to do? And who are you is not my name. She's asking me who I am at a soulful level. What am I here to do? What is my purpose? And those are the same 3 questions I ask myself. And that is what I ask myself when I've been beaten up and I'm feeling like a bag of shit and I don't want to drag my ass out of bed and I just want to pull a blanket over my head and it was too tough. That's what I do. And when I ask those questions, I come back to, I am here to serve. That's why I'm on the planet. So get your ass out of bed, go do what it is you came to do. That's how I stay motivated.
Beautiful words. Now, we call our people who listen to this Screwballs. And so you have any parting thoughts for those people who are out there and saying they're getting excited about this, but they want to either start a business or improve the business that they have?
Great question. So, it's very simple. Find your purpose. You will not sustain your motivation on money. Even if if you are broke right now and you're struggling financially, that's actually a powerful motivation. And so that's great. Wonderful. Now what happens when you get more money? The answer is you'll get more money and you'll go, oh, it's not enough. And you'll want to get more. And then you'll go, oh, well, that's it. Now I made the million. Now I need to make 5. Now I need to make 10. And it will just keep going and you will never be fulfilled. But if you reach your purpose, every day is fulfilling. Find your purpose. Get one red thread. You can get it as an ebook for less than $5. Go get the ebook, One Red Thread. It will walk you through the process of finding your purpose. And here's what I want you to know. If you think you found your purpose, you probably haven't. You probably found a passion. The passion and purpose are vastly different. Passion is transitory. It will change. If you're a male and you're heterosexual, think about what you were passionate about when you were 15. If that was your purpose, you'd be working in a lingerie store now. That's not your purpose. That's your passion. Passions change. Purpose doesn't. It's inherent. find it, dig into it, bring it up to the surface, and then run your business from that place. That will keep you going. It will allow you to up level your business. It will allow you to always commit to serving at a deeper and deeper level. It's what will set your ass on fire every single morning.
Well, folks, I think you probably have figured out by now why Dov has been coined one of the top 100 motivational speakers. All right, so this has been really, really great time for me to catch up with him. Thanks so much for coming on, Dov. I really appreciate it.
What a pleasure, Tom. Thank you so much. I'm honored and grateful to be here to serve. And again, I encourage each of you, dear listeners, to make sure that you go rate, review, and subscribe to the show and share it with your friends, because Tom puts a lot of work into bringing you so much value.
Well, I thank you so much. And we're going to have all Dov's stuff, including all his Roku TV links and all the stuff that he's doing in our show notes for this episode. So, hey, also get that podcast app that we have to make it easy for you to do and take us with you on the road. And hey, we'll catch you all on the next episode. See you later.